In this video, we will learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide integers. So what you see here on your screen is an integer reference sheet or a guide that can help with these rules that we're going to cover. So just to recap the prior videos, integers are a set of positive and negative whole numbers, and they can be represented on a number line, with positive numbers going to the right, negative numbers going to the left. The prior video also discussed absolute value, and the meaning of that being the distance a number is from 0 on the number line. So the absolute value of -5 is 5, while the absolute value of a +5 is also 5. The distance from 5 to 0 is 5 units, and the distance from -5 to 0 is also 5 units. So absolute value will always yield a positive answer. So I want us to focus here just on the adding integers part of this reference sheet. This reference sheet is available on the Blackboard shell too, so feel free to print or copy this and make your own reference sheet. That might even be more fruitful for you so you can remember these rules. So while we're adding integers, if we're adding numbers that are the same sign, meaning if we're adding two positives or adding two negatives, really the answer is whatever sign you added. So if I add a positive number and a positive number, I'm going to get a positive number. You guys have been doing this on all your math career, right? If I have 4 plus 5, I now have 9, right? Where it may be a little different is if I'm adding a negative to another negative, I just get another negative, right? So if I add a -4 and a -5, I now have -9. So if we look at the negative example in real life, if you owe me $4 and you owe me $5 more, you now owe me 9, right? So you're just adding those two negatives and you're just getting a larger absolute value of a negative number. Where adding integers can get a little confusing is when the signs are different. Just kind of looks a little foreign, but once we really practice them, we'll get a good grip on it. So when we're adding a positive and negative number, really what you're doing is you're finding the absolute value of those two numbers, taking the difference, and then keeping the sign of the larger number. So for example here, if I have a -4 and a +5, and we could view this with tokens too, and that is a lesson on IXL. Feel free to do that if you choose. But if I have -4, I could view that like this. I have 4 red tokens, and those red tokens just represent a negative. Right here, I have 5 positives. I'll put those in green. So I have 5 positives. So which do I have more of? I have more positives, right? And I have 1 more positive. So that's why our answer here is a +1. I have more positives than I do negatives, and I have 1 more positive. On the flip side, if we look at a +4 and a -5, I now have more negatives, right? We're going to show that using the same logic. If I have 4 positives and 5 negatives, I now have more negatives. So that's why our answer here is a negative. And then how many more do I have? I have 1 more negative. So that's why it's a -1. When you look at the tokens, really what you can do there, notice how I have 4 here and 5 here. I could match 1 for 1. So I'm just going to try to change this to black. So if I had a positive and a negative, that vanishes. A -1 plus a +1 is 0. So I can kind of match them, 1 for 1, 1 for 1, and 1 for 1. I now have this 1 left, and that 1 is negative. So just something to kind of consider there. It's really helpful, that visual, when we're adding integers. Okay. So I'm actually going to flip to the next worksheet and work through some adding integers problems, and then we'll come and we'll talk about subtracting integers. If we can make great sense of adding integers, subtracting won't be so bad because we can make them all look like this. So this is really important to understand. Adding the same sign, if you add a positive and positive, you get a positive. If you add a negative and negative, you get a negative. If they're different signs and it's addition, that's important that that's the actual operation happening there. You just take the difference, which is 1, and then the sign of the larger number goes with your answer. So let's work through a couple examples here. So if we have a -12 and a +7, and we're adding them, it's really important that you recognize that that's an addition question, right? -12 plus 7. So when it's addition, what I'd like is for those rules to pop in your head. Like, okay, it's addition, my signs are different, right? So I can take the difference, and not of -12 and 7, but of the difference of their absolute values. So the difference between 12 and 7 is 5. And then which do I have more of? I have more negatives than I have positive. So I want to attach a negative in front there, right? So again, by token, if you wanted to look at it that way, we have 12 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I have 7 positives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So really what you could do here is we could take this row of 6 and this row of 6. Those cancel. We could take 1 for 1 here, this one and this one. I now have 5 tokens remaining, and they're negative, which is why that answer yields a -5. So the visual actually is really nice, especially if the numbers are fairly small. If they're larger, of course, we don't want to make 50 dots, right, or 100 dots. So it's helpful to really wrap your head around that. Next, I have -6 plus 12. I really encourage you guys to either figure out your number value first or figure out your sign. Sign seems logical to me. So if I have a -6 plus 12, I know I have more positives. So right away, oops, no idea where 4 came from. We can have a positive symbol there. And then how many more do I have? From 6 to 12, I have 6 more positives. So we have a +6. Next, especially IXL, they will start jazzing it up here and giving you a question where you'll second guess yourself. 3 plus 4, you guys have been doing this forever. 3 plus 4 is 7, right? There's nothing fancy there. My signs are the same, so just add them up. Next, I have a -1 plus -46. So a -1 plus a -46, my signs are the same. So I know my answer is going to stay negative. When I add 2 negatives, I just get a larger negative. And then a -1 plus a -46 is -47. Right, and this is an example where, we don't want to necessarily draw tokens, right? I don't want you guys to put 46 red dots down. That's not fruitful for with your time, right? Next here we have a -34 plus 50. So a -34 plus 50, I know I have more positives. And now really I just need to figure out how many more positives do I have than negatives. And this is where scratch paper is going to come in handy, or your whiteboard when you take your GED test. So I'm just going to do 50 minus 34. And if I minus those, I get 16. So I get a +16. Really with integers, the best thing you can do is continue to practice it, right? So when you're finished with this video and this next video or upcoming videos, you really want to practice it in IXL. That's really what's going to help you out. Sometimes you'll have more than one number to add, right? So here's a couple examples of that. This is not in your guided notes packet if you did print it. These I threw up here just now, just to cover another topic and bridge it over to another more content. So what you can do when you're adding more than one integer is combine all your positives, combine all your negatives, and then make that one addition question. So for example, here I have a +11 and a +7. I can add those two right away, and I get 18. And this negative 12, I don't have anything to partner that with, so I'm just going to bring that down. So I have 18 plus negative 12 is a positive 6. I have more positives, right? And I have 6 more positives. Next, I have 5 plus 96 plus negative 7 plus negative 19 plus 0. So let's combine our positives and negatives. So I have my positives here. I have 5 plus 96 is 101. And I'm combining that with a negative 7 and a negative 19. And 0, we don't need to worry about that, right? Anything plus 0, we can ignore. So a negative 7 plus negative 19 gives me a negative 26. So I have 101 plus a negative 26. So now you want to ask yourself, do I have more negatives or more positives? Right? And we definitely have more positives. So my answer is going to yield a positive answer. I'm putting the plus here just to emphasize that. On IXL or any tool, really, you don't have to emphasize the plus. You just have to make sure you enter your minus should it be negative. But 101 plus negative 26, I have 75 more positives. Right? And if your math is a little fuzzy or you don't want to do this in your head, again, you could just quickly write it down on the side, 101 minus 26. And we would borrow, right? So 11 minus 6 is 5. 9 minus 2 is 7, and we get that 75. Right? So don't count yourself out right here and be like, well, I don't know what that is. Just do a little side work, right? Got to persevere through the problem. So again, if there's more than 2 integers that you're adding, definitely combine your negatives and then combine your positives. So negative 19 and a negative 5 is a negative 24, plus 4 and 16 is 20. So what do you have more of? Do you have more negatives or positives? We have more negatives, and we have 4 more, so a negative 4. Last here, zeros I'm going to ignore again, right? Zeros won't change my value. So I have a negative 58 and a negative 3, and then a positive 2. I'm just kind of organizing them for now. So a negative 58 and a negative 3 is together added is negative 61 plus 2. So my answer is going to be negative. So I know this choice is out. Right? Now think of it like you owe $61, right? But you gain 2. Or you're down $61, but you gain 2. Or you're down 61 pounds in weight, but you gain 2 back. You're now down 59. Right? We have more negatives. My signs are different. So I take the difference of 61 and 2. I get 59. And then this, because I have more negatives, that determines my sign. Okay. So if you'd like, I'd actually suggest you practice adding integers on IXL right now. Those lessons can be found in Blackboard. And then I'm going to continue another video on subtracting integers. And again, that's really where the meat is. You'll see that in the future on the GED test and as we get higher to algebra. So if you can wrap your head around adding integers, that's awesome, because we're going to change all subtraction to look like addition.